Corporation of the Village of Merrickville, Wolford, agenda for council at 7 o'clock on Monday, September the 14th, 2020. And I do remind members that our meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our website immediately or very shortly thereafter the close of the council meeting this evening. So we do have an agenda before us, folks, and I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda, please. Thank you, Mr. Foster, and seconded by Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville, Wolford does hereby approve the agenda of the regular council meeting of September the 14th, 2020 as circulated. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And just to make sure everybody does, if you look under item 7 on our agenda, under CAO report, the Main Street Revitalization Project update at the table. Everybody should have a copy at the table. It was distributed for your arrival. Thank you very much. Having called the meeting to order, I will ask if there is any pecuniary interest to be disclosed by any members. And there is, for the record, none indicated by the members. Thank you. That should have been done before the approval of the agenda, but I think we've covered both off adequately, and I'm getting a nod from our Deputy Clerk. Next, we do have the minutes of our meeting from August the 24th, and I have a motion, please, to put that on the table. And I'm looking to staff to hand me the motion, and they're doing that right now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I saw a hand go up, moved by Mr. Malloy, and a seconder would be. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville, Wolford does hereby approve the minutes of the regular council meeting of August the 24th, 2020 as circulated. Are there any errors and or omissions from any members? None being noted, so if the vote is on to receive them as approved and rather as circulated, all in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. Just give me a moment, gentlemen. I'll just caught up on my paperwork. Thank you. And next on our agenda is the recommended draft conditions for Merrickville Grove subdivision. So I have a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the table. Thank you, Mr. Foster, and seconded by Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville, Wolford does hereby receive the report from Brian Whitehead of JP2G Consultants Inc., together with attachments dated September the 10th, 2020, and that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville, Wolford does hereby recommend to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville the Merrickville Draft Plan of Subdivision, file number 07-T-19003, be subject to the conditions attached to the aforementioned report, and the Council does hereby direct staff to submit the aforementioned conditions of draft approval to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville for consideration as part of their draft approval for the Merrickville Grove subdivision. So, gentlemen, that's the motion on the table, and this has been this is the result of a process that has gone over many months. Meeting the statutory requirements under the Planning Act and moving forward with for a draft plan of the subdivision. It is what Council directed staff to bring forward. So here we are this evening, and there are a number of pieces in the attachment to the motion from our consultant planners, and Mr. Whitehead is with us this evening. And well, we don't need to go through every piece because Council is well familiar with them, but perhaps Mr. Whitehead, you might just walk through where we are now with the recommended draft plan that Council wanted brought forward, and the terms of conditions. You don't have to go through them. We've seen all of it before, but where the process takes us this evening, and then down to the county. So, and I'm glad that you have an oversized map just so we can refamiliarize ourselves. I know there's a copy in our packages, but they're on paper. That's 8.5 by 11, so it's nice to see the larger piece there.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Struthers, members of council. Again, that's Brian Whitehead, JP2G Consultants. I'm pleased to be here and assisting you with this review. It's a very important project for Merrickville, and we're proud to be part of it, assisting you. What I have with me tonight is this is not the draft plan, this is the conceptual plan.
Thank you.
For the subdivision. It best illustrates the changes that have occurred over time, and there's some of which will be included in here. The primary purpose of this document that's before council tonight is the draft conditions. There are some planning issues that have arisen out of since our last meeting and the public information session, which I felt were important enough to reach out to the applicant's planning consultant for a planning opinion on, and I'll just touch on those briefly. The conditions that are before council tonight are substantially the same as the ones that have been reviewed by council previously. And then what I can also do is update council on where we're at now, the next steps, and the process that you're going to be moving forward with. The attachments to my letter again include a planning opinion from Bill Holtzman on some topics that I requested that he take a look at as a result of the public information session. There's a Merrickville Grove Park Plan concept. The Parkview applicants have had a chance to review the draft conditions, and they made some minor requests for amendment to the draft conditions, which I'll present to council as well. There was an issue related to traffic that came up that was addressed by the Parkview traffic consultant, and a conceptual plan for the parkland, which we built into the draft conditions, and then the draft conditions themselves. Arising from the public information session, one was an issue related to the parkland block and why is the parkland block located where it is, and has consideration been given to alternative locations for the parkland block. And specifically, there were two property owners in McLean Landing Phase 2 that were concerned about the location of the parkland. Their thoughts were that the parkland should be located beside their property, and that the apartment block would be better suited at this location for reasons of proximity to the downtown. Also, because of the need for parkland in McLean Landing, and there was cash in lieu for McLean Landing. And the report that we got from Parkview was that they have indeed looked at alternative locations for the parkland. They've looked at each end. At the north end, there's a need for the storm pond to be located at that end, at the far end, because of engineering reasons. And it was felt that at this end, the parkland wouldn't service the bulk of the population within the subdivision. And for that reason and others, they felt that the parkland that they chose was an appropriate location. It's a larger parcel of land. It actually will be able to provide a wider range of recreation uses. There is a concept plan that they've shown, which we've built into the conditions for the types of services that they're willing to put in on the parkland, and we've tied that right into the draft conditions. And technically, they're only required to pay 5% of the land for parkland. In this case, they've provided the parkland, plus they're proposing to develop it because they're feeling that the location of this parkland is a key feature for the development, and it'll help market their facility. So the other point I would like to raise is that really, when you look at the distance between here and McLean's Landing, for that matter, it's less than a 5-minute walk from McLean Landing to the parkland where it's located now.
Exactly.
So, and I think in fairness, the main issue associated with the apartment block is is sort of these people not wanting to have a tall tower, which they refer to as a towering apartment building in their backyard. I've looked at that and I've concluded that the apartment building is a proposed 3-story building. The zoning for the parkland, or the R3, and the zoning for R2 and R1 all have the same building height, although not everybody builds a single detached dwelling 3 stories high, but it is the same building height. It's limited to 3 stories. I looked at it, and if you were to build a 3-story building at this location with a standard hip roof or mansard or standard roof, sloped roof, you could get 3 stories. If you build it with a flat roof, you could get 4 stories. So they're proposing 3 stories, so I'm recommending that you actually include that in as a requirement in the zoning that would be placed on the property, that it be limited to 3 stories. It would also be subject to site plan approval. What that means is, when this is not essentially first phase is St. John Street. That when the apartment building gets developed, then they're going to have to open up Alice Street as well, and that's something that we dug our heels in on, because we felt that in addition to St. John Street and Wallace Street, that there was a need for an additional access for emergency service purposes. So in this case, it could be a one-way street coming in, but it would provide that additional ability to service this block and provide an alternative access without having to have a cul-de-sac. So,
what's the direction
So we
on?
may have questions from council members, so I think Mr. Cameron, you had your hand up earlier.
No, go ahead, Tim.
What's the direction on?
Roy, you go ahead.
What's it?
North is this way.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. What's the direction on Walls? Is Walls 2-way or 1-way also?
Wallace is 2-way,
2-way.
and Alice is 2-way from the apartment building to St.
understand,
John.
but 1-way from
One
St.
way
Lawrence down.
from this way
Yeah.
in. At any rate, the other point is that this is north. Maybe we should be having it this way. I don't know if that makes it any easier for people, but north is always at the top, and the sun is at the south. So the shadow is going to be going inward and not a shadow effect on these properties. And so for those reasons and others, we've supported the opinion of Mr. Holtzman, and although we are recommending that a provision be included in the zoning to restrict the height of the building to 3 stories, and site plan control will be imposed or required in order to ensure that adequate buffering in the form of fencing or some kind of buffering be established to potentially minimize the adverse impacts that may apply.
Question from Mr. Cameron.
Yes. When you were having discussions about the apartment building, what types of barriers were they suggesting to buffer between the house and the apartment building itself? You said the
With
neighbor-
Parkview, you mean?
Yeah, with Parkview, yeah.
We didn't actually get into discussions on buffering and screening at this point.
Okay.
That would have to be a separate Planning Act application after draft plan approval.
So once they come back and seeking approval for the apartment building, then we can put stipulations.
Absolutely. It's a complete new application.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Second planning issue that came up quite a bit was from one particular ratepayer was the proposed access, and I'm going to, with permission of the mayor, I'm going to turn it back this way. Herbert Street, adjacent property owner, I can't remember which side, was concerned about an access coming out on Herbert Street from the parkland. And long story short, it's been determined, my thinking was that if we could get Parkview agreeing to providing buffering between the park and along Herbert Street, that would go a long way to addressing some concerns and I think we've actually made some strides with that particular ratepayer, and because there will be a requirement for fencing and buffering, and the pathway will be 3 meters, so there's a 12.2 meter width there of the road allowance to accommodate, which is ample. So there's sufficient room to accommodate the pathway and the fencing.
Question from Mr.
Yeah,
Cameron.
In that proposal for the walkway, are they going to take in consideration, I'm assuming there's going to be lighting along there? Along the pathway itself?
Well, that's a good question. It hasn't come up in conversation, but it's certainly something we could.
Well, I remember reading in some of the documents something about fencing and lighting and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And in your discussions, as you keep discussing with Parkview, is there going to be a consideration of where that light is going to fall? You know, like it's not going to shine into their backyards or along the side of their house to...
Excellent point. Lighting is part of any detailed
Design, yeah.
lighting and utilities, so there'd have to be a utility plan
Yeah.
and a lighting plan, and it'll all have to be.
It's just
The specifics of it we haven't got into at this
Yeah.
point, but you're
Well,
quite right
the
that
design of it would be probably a little bit challenged because there's houses on both sides.
Right.
So I mean, allowing the pathway to be lit so it's not a hazard for people using it at night, but also
Right.
including the privacy of the homeowners.
I think what you're thinking at is like avoiding globe lights.
Yes.
And
yes.
and
More-
packs,
more,
but more
Casting a shadow
exactly
in the correct spot.
exactly. It's dark sky friendly lighting.
So is Parkview okay with that type of
Well, again,
direction, or-
that conversation didn't take place. It's a conversation that can take place as part of the detailed design, there's sufficient flexibility in the conditions to address utilities and lighting and landscaping and all of the
Yeah.
design elements of the subdivision.
Because that would be a major concern, because most layouts, when you see that, it's always globe lighting, they go with the globe lighting, and it seems to cast a broader
Less lights,
beam, yeah.
less lights,
Yeah.
yep. So certainly
So as we move
go
forward.
for the
that
dark
will
sky
be-
lighting.
Yeah, as we move forward through this, that will be a consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Affordable housing came up as a concern at the open house, and I had to agree with the person who was advancing that argument that we should take another look at it. Mr. Holtzman, in his response, did take a look at affordable housing. Essentially, and I think in looking at the historical, review of my files and preparing for this meeting, this issue has come up previously, affordable housing, and with the type of development that's proposed with townhouses and the one apartment building, it's the type of development, it adds a mix of housing style to your municipality, but it's a mix that is normally oriented to housing that's more affordable naturally. So for that reason, in part, we felt that it was in conformity with the plan. But I think the response I got from Mr. Holtzman was probably not the response that the particular ratepayer wanted to hear. But but what's important to point out is that the application that's been filed, and this was pointed out to us by Parkview's planner, was filed in accordance with the policies that existed at the time, which was your previous official plan, not your new official plan. Your new official plan has policies that are much more thorough and rigid on affordable housing, but in the case of your previous official plan, which this subdivision is being reviewed with, the affordable housing policies are not as thorough. So just based on the mix of housing and the type of housing proposed, that in itself would be sufficient to demonstrate conformity with your official plan. So, and finally, the last issue came up after.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have no problem. A question on the affordable housing. We've adopted a new official plan before, as this Parkview discussion was developing. So they were aware of the new official plan, and in the documentation that I've been reading, most of the housing is going to be on the market at market value, and there's no income generated homes, like generated to specific incomes. So all these houses, even though they will be affordable in the sense that they're going to be cheaper than a single home, how are we ensuring that we're getting the 25% affordable housing available for younger families with children? How are we going down that path with this specific development? Are we going to be able to have houses that are going to be based on an income basis, or is it all going to be market value? Because the market's fluctuating and
Understood.
it's pricing a lot of people out of the market.
They didn't provide that information you're requesting about 25% income. They just, what they basically said was they would, develop it in one phase, implement measures to make the units as affordable as possible. They compared it to single detached as being cheaper, all those, and you've read it, right?
Yeah.
So, but my point again is that when it comes at the bottom line is that even though it's your new official plan was adopted after it was.
Yes.
In fact, I don't believe it's approved yet.
I believe it is.
Is it?
Sorry?
Our official plan is approved, is it not?
No, it's still at the county level.
Oh, it's still at the county level?
So,
Okay.
so this subdivision is being reviewed in accordance with the plan that existed
Yeah.
at the time and that it was filed.
Okay.
So,
But I do believe it was a request of council when we first entered into talks about this, that this subdivision reflected a certain percentage of affordable housing. I believe we had...
that was raised, it's in the documentation, it's been before council, it went to Parkview, and they came back with a revised planning report, flashing the mirror, telling us that it's being reviewed according to the existing plan and it complies.
Okay, because that's... I believe that was one of the concerns of council at the time when we first started to discuss this was, the fact that we needed affordable housing, we needed to bring in younger people.
Right.
Families, children, replenish. We're all getting a little bit too old around here, so we need to bring in a little youth. So I believe that was part of the conversation when we first entered into the talks with Parkview. So I'm just wondering how they're going to apply that request and how are we going to supply a certain amount of homes to make them available for lower income families. That's a main concern, a major concern for the community, and it was also a concern for council at the time. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, this isn't Parkview's first subdivision, is it?
No.
How have they handled this situation in prior subdivisions? How have they handled affordable housing?
I can't answer that, to be honest.
You don't know?
I
Okay.
don't know.
And I guess my other question would be is, they have bought, if I understand it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they've acquired multiple parts of the land for further subdivision. I don't know if you know that or not, but towards Reed Street. And so that'll be a whole new plan of subdivision, a whole new set of agreements will be reached for that one. So perhaps what we should be doing is, can we push county to get our new a new planning act into place, so it's on paper for when Parkview comes for their future development.
I won't digress too much, but...
No, I won't, but I'm just saying...
No, I won't.
Oh, okay.
The county's going through their official plan, we amended one part and parcel, so I don't know if we can push it anymore. Certainly ours is there. We haven't had any significant feedback or any that I'm aware of. There may be some tweaking to ensure that our approved draft official plan at the county level may have some tweaking in terms of updated provincial policy statements, and would be to, I think, Mr. Cameron's point, reinforce more the way a developer would respond to how they are addressing the 25% affordable housing in the provincial policy statement. But Mr. Whitehead is quite right. you know, the rules of engagement at the moment for the developer based on our current official plan. The sooner we have ours in place for any, whether it's Parkview or
Anybody else, right.
that comes forward, want to have a new plan in place, and you know, the sooner that gets done, the
Yeah.
better for sure.
Because if I understand everything correctly, and what I read was, attention was drawn to Parkview's attention, and they did little or nothing about it. They just said, well, you know, based on recent review, sale prices in the village, you know, they just picked a number in between X and Y. It didn't really help anybody who needed affordable housing, young families or just whatever else. And so we should make sure that if they come back to us, which they will because they own a big parcel of land up there, we should make sure our official plans, our plan, our zoning and everything else is in place, so we can say, no, you're going to do this.
Yep. So all I can say is our official plan is not being held up in the sense of there's an issue with our official plan. It's being held up because of process at the county level. And
I wasn't implying that. I was just saying, perhaps, you know, if we told, we're facing this situation, and you know, can you push it to the top maybe a bit?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
The final issue, Mr. Mayor, is traffic. After the public meeting, the traffic study was posted on the website. It generated some comments. Parkview got an opinion from their traffic engineer in response to the comments. There's a concern about the volume, and we've heard it before. There's a lot of traffic on St. Lawrence Street, a lot of concern about heavy vehicles, understandably, and you know, sometimes people don't obey the rules. Unfortunately, that's
Say it. So come on.
that's the traffic laws, right? So that's an enforcement matter, but it is reality. 3,000 cars a day seems like a lot of cars in a busy day. County road though, and they're designed for that level of traffic. It's a major thoroughfare. It is the main thoroughfare that everybody wants to use through Merrickville. So 10,000 cars a day is a lot of cars. 6,000 is quite a lot of cars, but 3,000 is a lot, but it's not nearly as much as what it could be. Their concern was that the traffic counts were taken at a certain time of the day, which was a Monday. Some of the shops are closed on Mondays. It was taken in the fall, not in the summer. And the reason for taking the traffic counts when they did was because it's the peak volume traffic times of the subdivision, which is morning and afternoon. So it's a business day in the fall that is an appropriate time to take those traffic counts. So, and that's a response from a qualified professional engineer that specializes in traffic counts. So it's a defensible opinion in my estimation. So we're prepared to support it in that regard.
And just your point, and that would be a requirement for the county, given it's the county road specifically.
Correct.
And so if they are having an issue or putting any, I'll say, conditions when it gets to the county level for approval, they would add those conditions at that point?
Absolutely. The traffic, the roads department at the county would have their staff review the traffic report as well and comment to the county planning department.
Right.
They wouldn't respond back to the municipality.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, I feel that the study that was done in the traffic wasn't detailed enough. If you go to the county website, which I've done here, the true number of cars going in and out of the village on a 24-hour period is 13,200 vehicles.
Okay.
And that's the study there, that's in 2017. Specifically, 3,220 cars that they've clocked going up and down St. Lawrence. But there's 13,200 vehicles entering the village from various points. So we all know it's a very small village and we have limited roads. So I think that 2017 study, to be on a very conservative note, would be at least 18% higher. over the last 3 years of traffic volume. So the true numbers on this would be greater. That subdivision is going to produce approximately 200 vehicles. Merrick Mills is going to produce about 100 vehicles. Phase 4 and 5 of Merrickville Estates is going to produce about 150 to 200 vehicles. So when you take a look at the numbers from 2017 and apply it to the possibilities in the next 3 years, we're going to be dealing with 14 to 15,000 vehicles a day in and out of our little village, which is a grave concern. Traffic volume has been a problem for many years. My concern about dumping the traffic out onto St. Lawrence from this project is going to compound that up and down the main street of St. Lawrence. That's why I've asked at many meetings we've had why we have not considered going Alice and Wallace out to Reed. I feel that would give us at least a year or 2 or maybe 3 to try and manage this volume of traffic within the village. We have to come up with some form of solution. So I went and sat on a veranda out on St. Lawrence for a 2-hour period and counted 143 cars.
What time?
It was between 10 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or 12:30. High rates of speed, high volume of cars, trucks. It's a major concern. It's a concern that the municipality is going to have to deal with after the fact. So trying to mitigate the problem before it compounds itself, I think, is something that we should be looking at. And I can't understand what the resistance is going out the back end of that project onto Reed Street, which is a lot less traffic, which would allow us a couple of years of discussion at the table to try and come up with some formula on how we're going to navigate this. 13,200 vehicles coming through the village. If you want to see it, you guys, it's right there.
Mike, so what percentage are coming down 43?
Well, there's 4,970 cars coming from Kentville. There's 3,400 cars coming from Smith Falls. There's 1,610 cars coming down Broadview.
So all of those cars coming from Smith Falls and Kentville are on 43, right?
Yeah.
So they're not on St. Lawrence.
Hang on a second.
So how many are on St.
I
Lawrence?
didn't say that. Right at the bridge, at the locks, 4,750 cars. Right beside the Royal Bank, it dwindles down to 2,950 cars, and then down St. Lawrence it's 3,220 cars. But it's not going to be just dealing with the volume of cars on St. Lawrence for this. It's the volume of cars within the village itself. Because these people aren't just going to travel up and down St. Lawrence. They're going to be going into other parts of the community. They're going to have people coming in other parts of the community. Traffic volume is going to increase. Once Kempville increases the width of 43, they're going to be building out. There's a new prison going in. There's going to be more volume of traffic. Tweed is
Almost closed.
yeah, I don't think it's going to close. Tweed is building out. There's all kinds of interest in Smith Falls. There's other buildings. There's a couple of hotels on the table. There's new buildings and new businesses being presented. So, I mean, I'm just taking all this into consideration and think that we should be trying to sort of redirect that traffic off of St. Lawrence if we can possibly. It gives us a couple of years to come up with some kind of a traffic solution. That's my concerns.
I'll get back to the traffic study in a moment with Mr. White, but Mr. Foster, you had a question?
Well, just, Mike, I appreciate the effort you put into this, but we're talking St. Lawrence Street, not 43 Kentville, Smith Falls. Mm-hmm. This project, adding 120 cars, over the 2.5 hours you sat on that front porch, you said how many cars went by?
143, I think it was.
So less than a car a minute.
Yeah, well, that's quite a volume for our small little village.
A minute, Mike. Now,
The other day-
how long? Stop. Let me finish. watch that clock and tell me that a car a minute is a lot of cars.
It is
It's
open
not.
cars.
No, it's not. Like, you can't see that car that went by in that minute. It's traveling at X number of feet per second, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's not parked on the street. So what I'm saying, this development is not responsible for whatever traffic woes we're going to experience. And secondary, I don't think you'll get too many people who live on Alice or Wallace thanking you for pushing a road through. And I don't think it's the responsibility of this builder to build roads for us. I think once we have our tax base expanded, then we'll play catch up as we usually do. But we're trying to solve problems that really, I don't believe, are that pressing at this point in time. Less than 1 car per minute on St. Lawrence isn't a big deal.
So if we get back to the traffic study that was done for the plan of development, that was done and sent to the county. So with the conditions and the layout of the plan, what council wanted to ensure within the footprint of the subdivision, there would be the road width that we wanted, and that is included now in what the developer is proposing, to have the road width we want within the subdivision. And for the secondary road in the south end, which is ingress only, and then it's the double lane at the by the apartments. So they've met what council indicated they wanted to have. So the traffic study is on the county portion of the road. So if there are going to be any conditions placed upon that, that will come from the county?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
The traffic study supports a single access at Wallace and an exit, well, it doesn't even deal with the exit here,
Right.
but the single access at Wallace was considered sufficient.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, we're requiring this John Street connection to be established prior to draft approval, and that's falling into place. And we also have a second access.
And in relation to truck traffic, we think during the development of the subdivision, access will be from County Road 16, not 15, which is St. Lawrence Street. I believe that's
correct.
That's in our so what I'm looking for, in our conditions.
Yeah, I wasn't at the first public meeting, but the response that was given from Parkview is that 16 is down here.
Yes.
And that this is coming through McLean's Landing to 16 is the direction of construction traffic. Once it gets to 16, I don't know which way it'll go, left or right.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron.
Just want to clarify something. That study that was done on October on a Monday.
Yes, sir.
95% of the businesses are closed on Mondays here.
I'm a-
There's no traffic, very low volumes of traffic after the long weekends, once people go back to school. So conducting a true traffic study, and I believe in this study it says that they counted 40 cars, 42 cars, 53 cars in those time frames from 7:30 in the morning till 8:30 in the morning, and then 4:30 in the afternoon till 5:30 in the afternoon, which is not really reflective of how the traffic moves through here. Most of the commuter traffic is out earlier and comes back a little later. So doing it on a Monday when there's no other traffic in the village is not reflective of the true numbers. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, those are the 4 issues. Just moving on then.
Yes, please.
And there were 2 conditions of draft approval that Parkview wanted to look into. And one was the parkland, and the concept plan is in your package, and I've alluded to that already. So the recommendation is to modify the condition to make reference to the improvements of the parkland that are illustrated on the Merrickville Grove Park concept presented to the village dated July 28th, 2020,
which includes play structures, picnic areas, seating areas, walkways, a garden, as well as landscaping, perimeter fencing, and grading to the satisfaction of the village. So I mentioned that. Secondly, they asked for an open concept on access, and actually what they were requesting was that they not be required to erect fencing around the parkland and along property lines with townhouse development adjacent to residential properties, unless the residential properties requested it. After considering their request, it was thought that that's probably not a great idea, because it's our experience that without fencing, and it could be tasteful, there's different types of fencing you can use, but with developments of this nature, even just about any development, it's important to define where those property lines are, because people will, put their grass cuttings on the other side, they'll put their accessory buildings, their storage garages, on the next property, and without actually knowing where those lines are, it's going to be nothing but a headache for you in the future. So again, if it's a concern about wanting to have an open concept from the back of the townhouse units onto the parkland, I can appreciate that, but I mean, there's 2 rail fences and different types of fencing that you can use.
Just has to be some sort of
to
demarcation.
achieve that visual connection without actually, and then defining the limit at the same time.
Exactly.
So that's sort of the comment that we're coming from.
And in fact,
Mr.
and in fact, that would be more in keeping with the historical part of the village. You go for a lot of those spaces there isn't any fencing. You stand at the end of one property and you look down 2 or 3 blocks through all the backyard properties and there's no fencing.
Where?
Well, there was on.
Not any place I've seen in the village.
Well, there was. Well, I'm going to say, okay, give me a second to get my street straight. Brock and Colburn, maybe. Anyway, back through that area, down by the school, you can see. You used to be able to see. I don't know. People may have put fences up recently, but you used to be able to see right down through the middle of it. No problem at all. And I'm pretty sure you still can. We'll go for a walk. We'll go for a walk.
As inviting as that sounds, I think I know where you mean where Dick lives. We're getting very localized.
Yeah.
Julia, that's the only place I could think of where you can see into people's backyards, and it stands out. Charlotte, our street.
I will double check my. I know where I'm talking about, and people may have put up fences since then. But historically speaking, fences were not a big part of the village.
But as Mr. Whitehead alludes to, it's a good idea to have a fence around a park, simply so that you're not kicking balls into people's backyards, so that the children have a defined area of play.
But I think
somebody has a dog in their backyard, you've got a fence to keep them out.
Not to speak for you, but my what I heard was not walled fencing, but 2 rail type fences and things, just to demarcate the line between the properties.
Just for clarification, Mr. Mayor, the conditions don't define what you're saying. I'm just saying that that's an option.
Yeah.
And the conditions simply state that fencing will be required around the storm pond, around the parkland, and on the property sides of development adjacent to other properties.
But it doesn't state what type of fencing.
It doesn't say what type of fencing. It's a negotiating point with the municipality, and that's pretty standard. So you don't get into the detailed design until after draft approval.
If it would be fair to say your earlier comment to Mr. Cameron, that would be something that comes back after approval when you get into things such as site plan agreement. So it could be very similar with the parkland, that negotiation in the site plan, if you will, of the park.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Which sort of segues into our next topic, unless there's any other
Sorry,
questions.
before we do, Mr. Cameron?
Just one question. So that landscape plan would fall into that purview then as well, right? We would get that after the fact in the negotiation, or is that something that we negotiate prior to approval?
Well, the draft conditions will require a landscape plan for the park, or a plan for the park, according to what I read. And there'll also be a lot grading and drainage plan and landscaping plan for the subdivision.
Okay, so will we see
So there'll
that,
be trees and,
are we to see that prior to approval or after as this develops through?
well, that's sort of gets into my next section here.
Okay,
If I may,
sorry for jumping ahead.
that's okay, you're on top of your game now.
Thank you, go ahead.
So the next section, Mr. Mayor, is statutory requirements and next steps. First paragraph just outlines, the public participation requirements under the Planning Act, which are a minimum of one public meeting. So you met the statutory requirement with the public meeting on March 10th, I believe. It was March 10th. In addition to that, there was the public information session on August 12th, and that was a recommendation that we made given the extent of the discussions and negotiations that have taken place with Parkview up to that point. And then, so technically you've exceeded the minimum requirements. Council can have as much public participation as you want or you deem necessary. But at this time, we're recommending it's appropriate for you to consider the draft conditions of draft approval, which are attached to our report. Again, this is not the draft plan, but the Parkview will have to amend their draft plan. The draft plan is actually the plan prepared by the George Bracken, I believe it is, the surveyor. And it'll have to be modified. And once it's modified, and then submitted to the county for modification. I've outlined the modifications that need to be made to that plan in my report. So once the plan gets modified and the final conditions drafted, normally there's a courtesy of circulating it, back to us to look at, but that's up to the county. I don't know if it needs to come back to council so much, just to make sure that, we should make sure that what's in there is covered off in whatever council approves. Like we could do that at the staff level. If there's something that's not there or is different, of course it would come back. But that's entirely up to the discretion of council how that would play out. But my point is that there's another little step there between this concept plan, our report, and a formal amendment to their subdivision application. Then there's also the zoning bylaw. There was a concurrent public meeting for both the subdivision and the zoning. And the zoning bylaw has not been passed. My recommendation is to not pass it yet, to wait until after draft plan approval, because we don't know if there are any other comments or recommendations from other agencies that could affect the layout of the plan. So it's best to wait. It's actually in Parkview's best interest to wait until after the draft conditions are approved, because then you're implementing a condition of draft approval rather than before. Procedurally, it's in there. I think it's in everybody's best interest. So there is the draft conditions are attached. They're substantially the same with the minor modifications I've recommended this evening. There is a package of information that has to be circulated back to the county, which is quite extensive. There has to be certified documentation that public meetings have been held, because they've delegated those responsibilities to the lower tier municipalities. So they must want to be an affidavit to confirm that procedurally the notifications have been taking place according to the Planning Act requirements. We can help you with that documentation. And copies of all the submissions that you've received from the public have to be included in the package. So it'll be a fairly thick package that goes to the county. And a copy of all minutes of public meetings. So once that package goes to the county, eventually the county draft approves the subdivision, then it's the start of a whole new process. And that's the detailed design of the subdivision, the sewers, the water, the stormwater, the roads, the utilities, everything has to be designed. And if they haven't started already, that's a fairly comprehensive process that will culminate in the preparation of a subdivision agreement. So as your engineering consultants, we would review those drawings on your behalf to make sure, and then there would be that all your standards and the good engineering practices are followed. There would be reporting back to council. And that would be a process eventually that would culminate with an agreement between Parkview and the municipality. There'd be security deposits posted for the works, there'd be insurance, there'd be monitoring of the works, a whole series of checks and balances incorporated into those agreements. And then there's also provincial approvals required for environmental compliance for the infrastructure. There's also legal requirements for absolute title that have to be confirmed. One of the amendments I should point out to the subdivision will be that the council recently approved the purchase or acquisition of this road extension. There is another lot in here that will be orphaned as a result of that transfer, and that should be rolled in to the subdivision. But if it's not, it'll stay with McLean Landing. Either way, you know, it's a lot that will either be approved in one or the other, or considered at one of the other subdivisions. That's basically it, Mr. Mayor. Unless there's any other questions, I'm available to respond.
Yeah, just to clarify before I go to Mr. Cameron, so on your letter dated the 10th of September, near the bottom of page 4, essentially you're outlining with the passing of the draft plans and conditions this evening, it's one of many, many steps yet to come for, not just for approval, the approving agency being the county, but other steps after that to finalize, formalize, cross T's, dot I's, and to say, to have the plan of subdivision registered.
Correct. What draft approval does is it approves the layout and principle of the lot lines.
With our conditions attached.
With your conditions. It's conditional approval of the, or draft approval.
Thank you.
I think the technical term is provisional.
Yeah. Mr. Cameron, I think then Mr. Roy, you had your hand up
No,
as well?
no.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I just,
Mr. Cameron.
how did we arrive at a high density plan when all the recommendations throughout this whole process have been medium density by yourself and also by the planner that was hired by Parkview? Everything has been identified as a recommendation of medium density in this specific area. And how did, and I don't understand how we arrived at all these townhomes when at one of our very first meetings that council had this discussion that we didn't want a bowling alley effect. We wanted varied roof lines. We wanted offset homes. Mr. Malloy, or Councillor Malloy brought up, not putting all the garages in front of the homes. We also made a request that there would be more living in place bungalows for singles, and I see that there are some bungalows, but they're 4 units, not a typical bungalow. We also asked for a better blend to reflect the current picture of the village itself. So I don't know how we migrated from medium density to a high density plan in all townhomes. I don't understand how that process went.
That's unfortunate.
Because at every meeting that we've had, probably not one that I missed, that maybe the changes came in, but every request by council was a medium density build. You recommended it yourself, a medium density build. Holtzman recommended, their planner recommended medium density build. There was all these provisions that council wanted to see in the final outcome of this draft proposal. And the picture that I'm looking there on that easel, it doesn't reflect a lot of the requests and concerns of council, and it doesn't reflect a lot of requests and concerns of the citizens. I just don't know how we got off track and went from medium to high density. Any explanation for that?
I'm not sure whether it's a similar question, Mr. Foster, but maybe, or do you want to wait to respond?
Oh, I'd love to hear the response, but I was going to explain to Mike that it's in a series of negotiations. we've asked for a lot, they've tried not to give us too much, the end of the day, they have to make money. They're not working on serviced land, they're servicing the entire corridor. When we took away, we said, no, we're not giving you our unopened road allowances, we lost bungalow units because they needed to increase density. So the only way they can they can make money on this and still put in all those services is to increase density. Does that make sense?
I understand that. Parkview did a fantastic job. They maximized their profit. But the people in this room don't work for Parkview. We work for the municipality. We work for the residents. And there was some major concerns from yourself, from Mr. Malloy. Don had a couple of comments. I had a couple of comments. The mayor had a couple of comments. And the reflection of those comments were no bowling alley look, varied roof lines, medium density, more compatible.
Whoa, hold on the medium density. Have you got the minutes there that says we wanted medium density?
Well, I got all the JP 2G documents. They're all in here.
I got the impression adding the apartment building kind of tipped it up into the high density.
Well, Mr. White.
Anyway, my point, Mike, is it's been a negotiation.
Well, I understand that, Bob. I understand it's negotiation. There's give and take on both sides. But I just don't understand why it seems that we've given up more than Parkview has. And I understand that they need to make money, and I understand this is a major bill for them. They're sinking a lot of money in there, and I'm not against the building at all. I welcome this project in the village. It's just that I think oversaturating that parcel of land with high density when the recommendations were medium density, and I'll find them in my notes here. But I just think that we're not doing the village any favors by maximizing that out. There's residuals to this that we're going to be having to deal with down the road. So I just wanted to know how we got
on that? Can you elaborate on that?
On what? On the
residuals we're going to have to deal with down the road?
Well, we're going to have to deal with, as the rest of the village builds out, water and sewer is going to become a concern.
Just stop right there. This will successfully take care of our water and sewer concerns in that we're not going to have another project like this.
Oh, okay.
We, quite simply, our water and sewer treatment system will allow for lots of record in this.
Yeah.
There's not going to be another big subdivision unless we expand our sewage treatment plant.
Well, there's a lot of infill lots that still need to be, exactly.
That's right, but they're
unless we increase our water sewage line.
Infill lots are accounted for.
Yes, I understand, but they're only counted for, Tim, for individual homes. They weren't designed in for maximizing the build potential on these pieces of property.
So this is our one shot at that.
Yeah.
Well,
So this is going to be something that is going to cause concern on that system, and it's going to cause us to come up with some sort of plan as we allow these other potential builds to come within the village. I mean, maximizing one area doesn't allow us to build out on another area. So
would that not make a lot of people happy?
well, I just hope that you're right, Councillor Foster, that this one subdivision is going to solve all our water and sewer problems. And if that is the case, I will apologize for my concerns.
You don't have to apologize. It's a reasonable concern.
Yeah.
But the fact is, we will not undertake another project like this until it's proven exactly what our sewage treatment plant can handle. We've been assured multiple times that our sewage treatment plant, as it exists, can handle this. So I don't see any need to go.
Well, I'm not saying that our sewage plant can't handle this.
Yeah, so we don't have to, see, what I'm saying, Mike, is once this is built, we don't have to accommodate any more wishes, whether Parkview has bought land all the way to Reed Street and down Corktown Road. That's irrelevant. Once this bill is in place and we monitor our sewage treatment plant, we don't allow any more bills of this nature until we're certain that we can handle it, or until there's sufficient capital thrown in the pot to expand the sewage treatment plant. We can say we're full. We can say, hey, we don't need any more of this. We got one high-density development. This has brought us in line. We can now afford to start our reserves, building reserves for our sewage treatment plant. This is, I'm not saying it's a panacea for all our issues, but this means a lot to the people that are paying $300 every 2 months for their water, minimum, $150. For the people on the north side, they're paying $50 a month for their water. But the south side here is paying $150 a month. 70. Well, you use a lot of water.
No, that's minimum.
I'm talking
That's
minimum.
minimum. So, yeah, 70 is minimum.
So we're like 320.
We'll take a pause there on that. Thank you, Mr.
Sorry,
Fletcher.
I
Mr.
apologize.
Cameron, Mr. Malloy has a question or a comment.
Except maybe I forgot it. I guess my point would be is that I remember when they first brought it to, and I certainly don't mean to, you're not defending them, so, you know, but I remember when they first brought it to us, and in their opening paragraphs, the development was to mirror, I don't think they use that word, but to mirror the village, you know, in density and things like this, right? Which means the rest of the village is probably medium density, if not less, you know. And their first development was quite spacious. They foolishly decided that they could have Herbert Street and build on Herbert Street, and they could build on Allison. I mean, whatever thought made them think they could do that. And so we take back our property, doesn't give them the right to, well, we can't build there, so now we have to densify the rest of it so we can make our money. Our job is not to make them their maximum amount of money. Our job is to allow them to build a development that reflects the village as a whole. And the village as a whole, in my estimation, is medium density, spacious living, and all of those things, which is what they talked about, spacious living. Remember they had the woman come and take pictures for a morning? You know, and they this is steel roofs, and we'll do this, we'll do that. No, crap, you know.
Well, I don't understand spacious living. I thought right from the get-go this was proposed as townhouses.
Oh, no, not all townhouses. There was
the bungalow townhomes?
No, there were many more individual single residences in that first development than there are now. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I don't have it with me. The cover sheets were colored photos of individual homes. So there were a whole bunch of individual homes in that, and they've all disappeared. So my only point is that I don't think we have to sacrifice our standards so they can make money. They're going to make money no matter what. They may not make the X amount that they want. They may make X minus, but they're still going to make money. They're trying to I understand their business. They're trying to maximize their profits. I understand that. That makes sense to me. But they don't have to maximize their profits on our backs. And I do think they have condensed the density to a point where it's not amiable, or not amiable is, I guess, not a bad word for it. Amiable to the rest of the village. It should be a much more soft, if that's the right word, development. A lot more space to it. A lot more leave it to beaver kids playing on the yard, if you know what I mean.
So I'll remind members, you know, back to the beginning, whatever sketches Parkview were showing, whether they were bungalows, townhouses
Medium
connected
density.
together, etc. They brought forward in their mind, I'll say, their concept for the development. We started discussions. We had under statutory requirements at our public meeting. Council, with eyes wide open, have had discussions. We felt it was important to maintain control over the unopened road allowances, and that's well identified and spoken to what those potential future uses would be. From the developer's point of view, they came back and said, yes, we can do that. From their point of view, there will be fewer bungalows. Again, eyes wide open. Council members have said, fine, let's move forward. So what we have before us this evening, which is exactly what council has said through staff, to our consultant planners, bring forward so we can approve the draft plan of agreement to go forward to the county, and that's what's on the table this evening for council to consider. So you can see how it may have evolved from going to whatever label you want to put on it in terms of, and what may be in your mind of being either medium to higher density, low density to medium, whatever you want to put on it. We know, council is fully aware of what's being brought forward, because that's what council said they wanted to see on the table tonight to approve to move forward. So rather than digressing back to the woulda, coulda, shoulda, this is exactly what council said, yes, we like. Let's move forward with it. And that's what's before us this evening. Mr. Cameron.
Little clarification, this council member never asked for that. I never asked for a high density build. We had talked, many discussions, and I just passed Bob the papers there from
Holtzman.
From Holtzman. That's Parkview's own builder, and it specifies medium build. It specifies that a high density build will cause snow storage problems. A medium build would be more consistent with the village. It would allow a better flow of traffic through there. We also have to consider emergencies, emergency vehicles. In the summertime, these people will be parking on the road. Higher density and higher volume of cars. I mean, there's a lot of consideration going in there.
But at the same time, you want housing affordability.
Well,
So
it's a formula that's hard to come by. But I mean, that's the builder's own planner that recommended that. JP2G recommended it as well. I haven't found it yet, but I'll find it. So right at the onset, we all started out at this table in a discussion saying that we did not want high density. We wanted a more cohesive blend in the village itself. There was many different talks, many different things kicked around, and I don't remember anybody sitting at this table and saying, well, let's maximize the housing on this particular build. Let's maximize the housing units. We all wanted bungalows. There was single homes. There was a mix of garden homes. The request was for different roof lines, different sight lines, no bowling alley effect. We all talked about managing snow. We talked about emergency vehicle access. I talked about going out to Reed Street. There was I'm trying to recall here, there was a document that stated that it may be a reasonable alternative than going out to St. Lawrence. So I don't know how it migrated to this maximum build that we're seeing here today. I'm definitely not in favor of maximizing that space. I'm not against the build. I welcome the build. I know we need the build, but we also need to make sure that it is more cohesive within the village and reflects the buildings that we see today, like how things are throughout the rest of the village.
So all I can do is remind council of the process that we've gone through, and I just want to make a couple of points of clarification. The reason we went to the road width and what Parkview has acquiesced to ensure the road width within the design is sufficient for traffic, parking, and emergency vehicles. To add to that, we even requested that secondary entranceway to allow emergency vehicles in. On the point of going out to Reed Street, I do remind members that there was correspondence from residents to the west, if you will, that absolutely did not want any roads going out to Reed Street Reed Street through Alice Street and I think it's Wallace and or Wallace to that point. How did we get to this point? All I can do is again remind members, this was call it a negotiation if you will. There were certain things that I would say were near and dear to us, the unopened road allowances. Parkview said, well, for us to do that, to move forward with, quotation marks, their plan, there will be fewer bungalows. So, if you will, the actions of council, the wishes of council to maintain, to keep those unopened road allowances unencumbered, from Parkview's point of view, is well, there'll be fewer bungalows. If that moves it from medium to high density by definition, it's not a matter of what we asked for. It's a result of the negotiations we had with the developer. That has brought us to where we are this evening. And again, I remind council members, this is not new to you tonight. You have all known this for quite some time, to the point where what we have for this night is not new and shock and awe. Council members said, yep, we know the number of houses, we know, X number of bungalows, we know the apartment block, the X number of townhouses. Bring that forward, and that's what we have before us. So I could just remind you of the process that we collectively went through, and the decisions and directions we gave through our consultant planner to Parkview. Is all what we agreed to, that we wanted to see and be brought forward. I think Mr. Malloy had his hand up, and then Mr. Cameron.
This may be a minor point, but they never came to us and said, well, if that's what you want, you're gonna have less bungalows.
Well,
They never said that. All of a sudden.
Okay, then Mr. Malloy, I will rephrase it.
Okay.
I'll rephrase it. As a result of us saying we want them unencumbered, right? What they came back with was fewer bungalows.
Yeah, on their maps.
Correct.
Yeah, sort of
Yeah.
under the door type thing, yeah. But anyway, but that's a vital point, because I think if they'd actually sat, excuse me for pointing there, but if they'd actually sat there and said, okay, if you want that, then we're going to have less bungalows, that would have led to a whole bunch of discussion. It just came up with a map that showed that. And to your point, you're right. As part of the process, as a council, we've moved it forward. But as a council, we've never actually voted on it. We've just moved it forward, letting.
Well, I know, that's why we have a motion tonight.
Yeah, okay, but you keep. If I interpret you correctly, you're implying because we kept moving it forward, we have in fact agreed to do this.
No, we've agreed that we wanted the concept brought forward for council to.
And
Mr. Malloy, please do not twist my words around to be. Mr. Malloy.
I started with that. I did.
Mr. Malloy, I did not interrupt you. Please do not interrupt me.
Actually, you are interrupting me. I had the floor, and you jumped in on it. You are interrupting me. In fact, jeez.
Actually, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah, well, then let me continue my point. Let me continue my point. And my point is, as this process went on, the council, all of us around said, okay, let's continue. But by continuing the discussion did not, in fact, mean that we were acquiescing to it. Came to this point where we have a vote. If people around the table want to question what's happening, that's their, not only is that their privilege, that's their job to question what's happening. If it doesn't quite suit what they think was going to happen, and to not allow those questions to happen is not correct.
I will say this, Mr. Malloy, I never at any point suggested that council should not be allowed to ask any questions.
I didn't say a word.
Be allowed to ask any questions. What I was saying was, whatever the previous meeting was, what we saw before us, council members said yes. It was not a vote, but council members said yes, bring that forward for consideration to be passed as our draft plan. And then it was asked, how did we get there? And all I was saying was, it was the council conversations, you know, with the input from our consultant planners in terms of appropriate draft conditions, was reflecting, you know, what council members were saying, and the feedback from the public meeting, et cetera, et cetera. All I'm saying is, that's how it got to this evening. The question, how do we get here? That's how we got here, Mr. Malloy. And please, not being dissimilar to anybody else, do not misconstrue my words that I was suggesting that there ought not be any questions or comments from council members. Thank you. Mr. Cameron.
Thank you. You alluded that the people on Wallace and Alice out to Reed don't want traffic going through their area. Either do the people that live out on St. Lawrence. So their concerns are right at the very beginning. At the public meeting that we had on March the 10th, they were addressing that issue because they had presented a throughway out to St. Lawrence. So nobody really wants it. Traffic going through their backyard, I understand that. But I think our job is to take a look at all the options and try to look at how to best manage the traffic flow. And I think going out onto St. Lawrence is a mistake. I feel out to Reed is a better solution for us. And, you know, I think some of the other parts of the statement that you just made, there was discussion at the table, and council did put some direction forward for consideration, but this plan doesn't reflect that. So that's why I'm asking how we got
I
there.
didn't catch the word, the plan doesn't what?
I said, we had discussions at the table, and council had put their requests forward to Parkview, but those requests and those wants and concerns of council and the public do not reflect on that draft proposal. So there was concerns about high density, there was concerns about traffic flow, there was concerns about being more cohesive with the village, there was concerns about roof lines, there was concerns about the bowling alley effect. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And that picture doesn't reflect the concerns that us as councillors brought up and the public. So that's why I was wondering. During this process, we had put in some requests, but I don't really see the requests besides keeping the road allowances. That's all I see.
Thank you.
I don't see a varied roof line. I don't see a more cohesive application or a plan there to fit better into the village itself. I see a plan that is maximizing its build and its space and its profit. That's what I see. Thank you.
Mr. Foster. Oh, sorry.
Well, it's just
And then Mr. Helpy, you wanted to speak as well?
very briefly, just our request, or Mike, the idea of going across to Alice Street, so they would build a block and a half of road for us, or 2 blocks of road for us, right? Do we have any idea what that costs to build 2 blocks of road?
They're not getting charged any fees. We're
No,
not charging them
build.
any fees.
Yeah, but we're
If
not
they were
providing
building
them.
if they
we're
were
not
building
providing
that
them.
in Ottawa, there would be millions of dollars in fees.
And there would be sewers in the street, and there would be hydro, and there would be storm sewers, and there would be all of the things that you tap into in a serviced area. Like I think North Grenville's lot development fees are, is it $27,000?
Yeah.
For a serviced lot in the urban area?
Mm-hmm.
Serviced. This developer is building, and again, I'm not invested in this. I would love to see this happen. But the reality is, they're building a street, they're putting all of the services in the street, they're putting the hydro and everything in the street. There's nothing there. And we know what that's built on. We remember what it sounded like here in the village. I'm sure you could hear the whole rams out on Corktown Road last year when we were doing, let me finish, when we were doing Lewis and all the rest of it. This will be hell for everyone in the neighborhood for probably 2 years, year and a half anyway. Because they're going to have to go through solid rock. But this is the only way we can have large-scale growth. Nobody, other than existing lots of record that are serviced within the village, nobody's running sewers, etc., to build on 80 by 120 foot lots. Mm-hmm. They have to increase the density to pay for all these services that they are installing. Us expecting them to put a road through Alice or Wallace out to Reed Street, I have no idea what it cost. I know back in the day, like 30 years ago, they used to talk about $1 million a kilometer, and we all thought that was crazy. I would bet you that $500,000 or maybe $250,000 wouldn't get you to Alice Street from there. So all I'm saying is that, again, just talking through my hat now. I have no idea what it costs to build a road, but either do you.
Okay, well, I have a response to that. So you're telling me that Alice Street out to St. Lawrence and Wallace Street out to St. Lawrence are all going to have all those services in them?
Mike, I didn't say that. I said they still got to build a road, and they still have to build it to a standard. Alice Street is not going to have any services on it at all, probably. If they can service it off of St. John.
So why can't they build a road from St. John out to Reed Street without services? If they're
Yes,
going to
they
do
can. They can.
Well,
but it's still a road, Mike. It still costs you to build a road. How much does it cost us to put roads through the rural areas? And we're not putting services on them.
well,
This all costs money, Mike.
your point was that it was going to be extravagant for them because they had to run services.
On St. John. You're wondering why, Mike, you were talking, and it's a very good question. If we could, in an ideal situation, we'd have individual homes with gardens and on 80 by 120 foot lots, that such as the village standard is. Nobody can afford to put the sewers in at that, unless you're spending over $1 million a household. These units are going to sell, and by the time they finish building these units, they may cost $400,000 or more. Who knows? The cost of building materials, the cost of labor, cost of everything's going through the roof.
Yeah.
These guys are stepping up. They're going to try and do it. More power to them.
Yeah. Well, I just misunderstood what you said because I was talking about building out to Reed Street, and then you alluded that they had to run sewer, electrical, and everything out to Reed.
No, on St. John Street, Mike, they had to
Well,
run
of
that
course.
in order to
Yes.
service those houses.
Yeah.
That's why they have the density, because you can't pay for that with 80 by 120 foot lots. If they were only allowed to put 6 houses on St. John, how much would it cost to service each of those houses?
Well, you know, Bob, I keep going back to this. I completely understand Parkview's want to maximize the bill, to maximize their profit. I understand that. But I'm not here fighting for Parkview. I'm here fighting for the constituent. I don't want it. The constituents don't want it. It's been indicated in every letter they've sent. It was at the open meeting we had at the community center. There was letter after letter after letter after letter after letter stating that they didn't want it. So all I'm saying is we should be trying to make this build a little more cohesive, a little more blended, a little bit more suitable for the village. And saturating an area and dumping all this into people's backyards and going for quantity over quality of life, I don't think is something that we should take lightly. I understand the need to build. I understand that there are high costs. I understand that. But the thing is that we should be trying to do our due diligence to see a picture on that easel that's more reflective to what council had asked for in the beginning and what the public has asked for all along. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
You have something you want to add, Mike?
You go, sorry, is your hand up, Mr. Helvey?
Yeah. I know this is still just in the draft plan, but if we keep diddling around, we're going to lose it. And people are going to have to pay a heck of a lot more taxes if we don't go ahead with something like this. We're still not in the final plan yet. So let's keep going till we get something final. Sure, Parkview wants to do it, and that's great. I mean, they're not poor contractors. You look what they're doing in Smith Falls.
Yeah.
And I'm darn glad that they're interested in coming here. Yeah, you're not going to some people are saying, oh, I don't want to change. Well, if you don't change, you either go ahead or you go back. And I think it's maybe be some problems, but it's still going to be good for the whole municipality. Well, I think we should go ahead with it. Stop nitpicking all this stuff and,
Move forward?
yes.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. If there aren't any new questions or comments, is there anything additional you wanted to ask? No is an acceptable answer.
You don't open anything up.
So unless you need the motion read again, members, and I actually I will, not that long, and then I will call the vote. So it's moved by Mr. Foster, and seconded by Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville does hereby receive the report from Brian Whitehead of JP2G Consultants, Inc., together with attachments dated September the 10th, 2020, and that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville does recommend to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville the Merrickville Draft Plan of Subdivision, file number 07T19003, be subject to the conditions attached to the aforementioned report, and the Council does hereby direct staff to submit the aforementioned conditions of draft approval to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville for consideration as part of their draft approval for the Merrickville Grove subdivision. So, as I said earlier, are there any new questions or comments? Mr. Malloy.
One quick question. Brian, how many doors are we talking about now?
99.
99? That doesn't include the apartment.
That includes the apartments.
That includes the apartment? And how many would be in the apartment?
15.
15, so 99, okay. So 84.
84.
84?
Plus maybe the one lot here.
Yeah, okay.
So,
And do you have any recollection of where it was when they started?
it was
Ballpark is fine.
within 2 or 3 units.
Of 84.
Probably 80, well, at the townhouses, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they acquired this additional land.
Yeah.
They gave up some units on the road allowances.
The land they didn't own, yeah?
And then they got 1 or 2 extra blocks.
Okay, so 84. It's been
So it wound up being, I think, 1 more unit than before.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried. Thank you. And thank you for attending this evening, Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Mayor.
That's an hour and a half, Brian.
And move on to the clerk executive position.
You want me to let them out?
Right.
I'll let him know.
I have a motion regarding the appointment to our police service board, and I think I have a motion to receive the information. I have a mover and a seconder for this motion, please. Thank you, Mr. Malloy, and a seconder would be, thank you, Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville does hereby receive correspondence from Gita Rambura, Appointments Officer at the Ministry of the Solicitor General, appointing Mr. Victor Sutherland to the Merrickville Police Services Board, dated July the 24th, 2020, and the Council does hereby also receive a copy of Mr. Sutherland's oath of office sworn September the 2nd, 2019. And all in favor?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, yeah. Mr. Cameron, Mr. Malloy's hand went up. Did Mr. Foster, was your hand up? No, okay, Mr. Cameron.
Did Del Bauer resign from the
No,
police service board, or are we adding an additional?
No, this is the provincial appointee, and members may recall, Jacques Pelletier had been the provincial appointee, and he had stepped down.
Thank you.
Mr.
Well,
Malloy?
just a question. This is a provincial appointee.
Provincial
right?
appointee.
And they chose it themselves. We didn't recommend it.
Correct.
Your worship, if I may, I think it'd be more appropriate for me to let,
Sure.
you can continue your discussion.
Sorry?
It's more appropriate, I think, for me to let Brian Whitehead leave the building.
Yes.
If you let Brian know.
Thank
Yes.
you very much, Your worship. And just so the council can continue without interruption, if that's okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So just to,
You going out?
the clarification, that yes,
Sorry, Doug.
it is a provincial appointee
Yeah.
and does not involve council.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
yep. No other questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. And then members in the package, you will see there's, I'll reach over for the motion to receive the correspondence. And so a mover and a seconder for that, that is regarding provincial significant wetlands. Thank you. Moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville Wolford does hereby receive the following with respect to Council's Resolution Number R-029-2020 regarding provincially significant wetlands designations for information purposes. First piece of correspondence was correspondence from myself to the municipalities that supported or endorsed the aforementioned resolution dated September the 4th, 2020. And I believe, I'll just turn to our deputy clerk at the moment, there were some almost 30 municipalities across the province that supported our resolution. And the second correspondence is from myself to the Honorable John Yakubuski, dated September the 4th, 2020. And copies of those correspondence were sent to the property owners in question, as was earlier, I think, our previous meeting, the correspondence that we had received from the province as well was sent to those residents as well. So I'm not sure if there are any questions. It's for council's information.
One observation. I read that letter about 5 times before I figured out what was going on. I thought you were writing a letter to yourself. 'Cause, you know,
Okay.
I'm saying, it just was nothing. I get this now. Okay. I'm just a little slower than most of
You've
the
been out of the classroom for a while.
All in favor to receive the correspondence as information? Thank you very much. It is carried.
Just comment,
Mr. Foster.
did everyone see the letter from John
Minor?
Minor in the
Yeah.
Yes.
Merrickville Times?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, it's very, very much
That's
appreciated. And next, I'll wait for our CAO to come back for the next 2 pieces, which regarding the framework for reopening office and Main Street revitalization update. So, Mr.
Well, he's not here.
Robertson will join us momentarily.
Can I ask one quick question though? What's LGLDHU?
Sorry, what correspondence are you looking at?
The one we're going to do in a minute. Says on 3rd page maybe?
So, go
Top
ahead.
4 or 5, including the LGLDHU.
Leeds Grenville Lanark District Health Unit.
Okay, there you go. Good, okay. I tried everything. I had Leeds and Grenville, no problem.
Don't tell me you ended up talking to yourself.
Oh yeah. The hell's that?
Mr. Halpy.
Yeah, I think we should kind of really look at this opening in TV tonight. Ontario had 353 new outbreaks today.
353 today?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's Ottawa, Toronto, and like not this area,
Yeah.
Well, they're talking, yeah, the areas of concern are, I think Peel.
yeah, Peel,
Toronto,
Ottawa.
and Ottawa. And Mr. Robertson, we've just had a wee bit of comments. We're down to the framework for reopening in your memo. We haven't gotten into your memo specifically, but on Mr. Halpney's point, the Premier had I believe it's a press conference, certainly a statement today, at a minimum, indicating that the surging, his word, of COVID-19 is cause for concern, and that another shutdown is not off the table. So, good point you raised, Mr. Halpy. There were over 300 cases today in the province of Ontario. But we'll get a motion regarding the memo from our CAO. And so a mover and a seconder for that motion, please. Thank you, Mr. Helpney, and a seconder would be, thank you, Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville-Wolford does hereby receive report CAO-09-2020, being a report regarding a framework for reopening the village office and challenges arising due to COVID-19 for information purposes. So members have definitely read your report. Mr. Robertson, was there anything you wanted to point out in particular, other than to say that we can expect more in the near future as to how we may go about opening the office?
Thank you, Worship. You can expect more in the future. We're monitoring it closely, and I just want to emphasize so that council is aware, staff are eager as everybody else is to get life as much as we can close back to normal. I think the entire world is probably feeling that, and we're obviously no different. So it's with a lot of thought and consideration, discussion with staff before we bring a report like that forward to council. We just want to reassure you that.
Great. Yeah. Okay. That's great. Mr. Malloy.
Can we get a brief observation on staff, how things are running in the offices and things like that?
Right now, certainly, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor. So, we at the very beginning of this, we were all in the office. After the first MECG meeting, all staff were still reporting to work, but we realized very quickly that we needed to put some measures in place where staff would have the ability to work remotely. So we looked at the technology and the tools, and it was quite a scramble because every residence and every employee's residence has a different set of, accessibility to bandwidth, locations, everything else. So it was quite a scramble that way, but we set up VPNs so you can remote access digital files. We had to change and actually upgrade our server capacity here, our service with our internet capacity, which boosted the bandwidth for staff at home. Very marginal cost things, actually, at the end of the day. With our voice over internet protocol system, we were able to actually just have staff take the phone home with them and plug it into their servers at home, their modems at home, and still continue to access their phones. Others have had where it's weaker signals and not enough bandwidth.
So when you said take the phone home, that's the 4791?
That's correct.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so that their work extension still functions at home, so they can answer calls that way, get their voicemail at home and so forth. As time has gone on, and so we adapted our process, and it depends based on the department. Obviously, our operations staff continue to work there outside the vast majority of the time and so forth, but that's primarily the office staff. Anybody that at the outset, just by the nature of their work, was able to spend more time at home, that's what we did, and so forth. As time has gone on, staff have gradually started migrating a little bit back to the office, partially because they just find it more efficient if they have faster bandwidth here, and it can be a little frustrating when you're spending too much time at home watching the little donut spin on your screen. So.
I thought you were talking with their kids.
Yeah, no, different kind of donut. So they started migrating back in, but not all. And so what we have done is I think we've kind of rebalanced. We're kind of at the midpoint now. Some staff are working a couple of days a week at home, 2 or 3 days. The other 2 or 3 they come in, depending on the week and what the reports are that are necessary. We have had inquiries from the public to staff asking about. Is there a timeline for when we're going to be opening? My sense in feedback from staff is the majority of those have just been more curiosity than anything, and that's just my gauge on it. I stand to be corrected if that's not the case. But we seem to be able to provide the same or very, very similar level of service as what we were pre-pandemic, just in a different way, right? The one thing I think staff miss, quite honestly, is the human interaction with residents. They miss that, right? I can see that in staff. It's something where on the phone it's just not the same as it is when you're in person. Face to face, being able to see the facial reaction. And yeah, very much, Your Worship. I just saw your motion there. Yeah, very much the same with council. It was a pleasure to have council come back in person so that we can see the facial reactions, hear the tone in your voice better, and so forth. So much communication is nonverbal. You'll lose a lot when you're on a phone. But it seems to be going well. And I say that considering the circumstances. But I'll be frank, I feel very blessed with the team that we have. The dedication level that we have is just outstanding. Like just the commitment to serving this community, Your Worship, I am blown away by our team. So I can't say enough about them and thank them for that. I think the community has a great deal to be appreciative of for our team. And they're eager, they're there, they want to serve, they take a great deal of pride in the level of service that they provide. And they're as eager, I think, as anybody to that day when we can open the doors and get back down to normal life again. So.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moore, and then Mr. Foster.
And in particular, how about the building department?
So one exception, Your Worship, perhaps an area that we've struggled with, and we are moving ahead. As you know, we've appointed Sean Merriman as our interim deputy chief building official. We're in a transition this week. These few days, we're shifting from Randy Wilkinson and his last day over to Sean. We have had some struggles. You're absolutely right. But I also want to clarify something on that. Some of those struggles with the service level are not related to any reduction in service from staff. I've spoken to other CAOs, I've spoken to the RVCA across the province, maybe across the country. There's been a dramatic, surprising upswing in interest in development. And that has impacted us on the urban planning need, the planning side, and on the building permit side. So we are having struggles at times keeping up with the requests and so forth. We've always stayed, as far as I'm aware, within the legal requirements of responses to building permits and so forth. The other thing that's been very evident to me is that Randy Wilkinson in his years here has built a very, very positive working relationship with our builders. Huge amount of respect for him. And I think we have phenomenal builders in town. I've spoken to several of them to talk about them, just letting them know we're on it. So we're going to get their permits to them as soon as we possibly can. But it's a transition, and I will be coming back to council sometime, hopefully in the near future. I committed to you, I think it's well over a year now. The pandemic's put the brakes on things a little bit for us in some regards, but coming back to you with some recommendations in terms of refining our organizational structure. Just to shift gears a little bit here, in speaking with some of the other CAOs, even hearing from Ottawa indirectly through other CAOs and so forth, there isn't really an expectation this is going to die off. And I think Councillor Foster even made that comment a couple of weeks ago. This surprised everybody. Everybody was expecting there to be a lull in development interest. I'll be quite frank with you. I was surprised that Parkview continued with their level of interest in pursuing this project. But they didn't seem to blink. And if anything, we've had a dramatic upswing in interest. And now what I'm hearing is they don't really expect it to subside. And the stakeholders I've spoken to don't expect to see it subside anywhere in the near future. So seems to be, some of the opinions are that there seems to be a migration from people from Ottawa or the major urban centers wanting to get out into the country where they have more fresh air, a little bit more space. I can see that from something like COVID, where you're worried about keeping your distance and so forth. It's brought that home to reality. That may shift again as, if they come out with a serum for this thing, you may see that ebb. You might see people who are now buying cottages, putting them back up for sale, or who are buying RVs, putting them back up for sale again. Mm-hmm. It's cyclical, and none of us has a crystal ball on it, but we're doing the best we can.
Thank you. Mr. Foster.
Yeah, just on the development side, I think it's going to continue. People are discovering they don't have to go to work in Ottawa.
Or Toronto.
Or Toronto. As soon as people discover that they can work from home, it may not be great work, I don't know, I've never tried it. Hard to fight fires from home. But
Hopefully you do.
Yeah. Having said that, I just wanted to make sure that, hopefully we're all on the same page. Staff's done a fantastic job. Administration has continued. People want things to be the way they were. They're not. They may never be the way they were.
Right.
Every single one of our employees is an essential worker.
Yeah.
In that, we can't lose anybody. We have a single person come in, test positive for COVID. You imagine somebody testing positive in the fire hall for COVID. How many people would he take out of the fire department? How many active members would we lose? And the same with Public Works. God forbid anybody comes down with COVID this winter. We're going to lose how many snowplow operators, etc. We don't have the depth to be able to afford to lose anybody, and that's without talking about administration. You know, if we can't collect the taxes, pay the bills, et cetera, it's going to be an ugly scene. So whenever members of the public press for normalization, I really think as a council we should be prepared to tell them that when the world goes back to normal, we'll go back to normal, but we're not pushing the envelope, that we should maintain a high degree of caution because we don't have the absorptive capacity to take a body shot.
Good point, good point.
It's a, as we've said to the public, you know, we want you to be diligent and sensible, and you know, because we have not had community spread, you know, Merrickville Wolford residents have done a great job. You know, we need to reflect the same thing in terms of being diligent and sensible in terms of the accessibility, if you will, to be inside the building. And I guess a question I would ask is, has anybody, because sometimes the point of contact at that front desk is to pay a bill. Now, while some people may not be paying their bills on time, I have not heard, and probably more to the point from staff, is anybody saying, I haven't been able to pay my bill on time because I am unable to, you know, complete the transaction. And I'm not sure if we had any comments like that. So while it's near and dear to have it open, you know, that front desk, if you will, it might be more of a social thing than oh, that's the only way I'm able to pay. So, fair.
But I will make one observation.
Yeah,
if I may.
well, then I go to Mr. Cameron. Yeah, quick observation on that
The only-
point.
I was saying, our downstairs is more secure than the banks. You know, like when you go to the banks, it's just a single thing like that. Karina, on the other hand, is behind with the speakers and all of those things. So I suspect our front office.
That
our
may
front
well
desk-
be an easy step forward, and that'll come in the near future. As Mr. Roberts has said, there'll be more coming forward.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, that we are in a much stronger position, I think, than many that way.
Yeah.
And I won't belabor this long, but I will just say we do have staff that are medically compromised in some way, shape, or form. And just to illustrate very briefly, so Karina's phenomenal at that front desk, handling the emails, phone calls. She's coordinating and helping me triage all the CBO calls and so forth right now. To introduce, with the volume of work she is now absorbing for some other staff that aren't able to be here, to introduce an additional communication tool where she also has to have that interaction with residents is not going to overall improve service, quite frankly, with one person there. So that is just to illustrate the point that you're making. With a small team, it doesn't take much to throw you off kilter, and it can ultimately,
Which
and
is
this
your point.
one of my comments here, could actually reduce the level of service if we are not careful in how we do that.
Yeah, great, thank you. Mr. Cameron?
Well, I agree with all the comments at the table. Staff is definitely important. But I think the connection with our constituents is also, and it would be, I think, to our benefit if we could limit the access in the building itself to the public, but allow that front door to open and some interaction. As Mr. Malloy pointed out, we're well protected down there. Staff, I'm sure, still do grocery shopping and banking and getting gas and so on and so forth. So the work environment here, I think, is designed for protection, with the separate offices, the vestibule out front, the limited access into the building. I think opening that door and allowing the public to transact with the staff and the municipality is something that we should be trying to expedite. Thank you.
Mr. Foster?
Again, to reiterate, I don't see it being worth the risk. I understand both Councillor Malloy and Councillor Cameron's statements that we have an ideally situated foyer. We also we've entered very quickly into a time where businesses that aren't prepared to go online are dying. If you didn't have an online presence, you went down, right? You notice that municipality is no different than a business in many ways. We should be sending out in our utility bills, the next time we send them out, the same form that I just signed at the last meeting, which basically is your agreement to allow them to send you, I don't know if it's an unsecured email, basically they'll email you your bill and you set yourself up for electronic banking, just to nudge There are some people who will never be comfortable with that, but there are some people who will readily be comfortable with that. The savings to the village, in terms of postage, et cetera, will definitely be there. But also just to encourage people to pay more electronically. It's inconvenient for a lot of people to come in, and a lot of people will never switch over, and I understand that. I'm a slow adopter myself, but we should be encouraging people now. If there's one thing the pandemic has taught us is, a lot of businesses have survived that had an online presence, like Mr. McGarrigle's, I use them for example, or Wickwich, or whatever. Those businesses rolled without customers coming in the door. So just a lesson learned.
Actually, point well taken, Your Worship.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Robertson. And so the motion on the table is to receive the report for information purposes. All in favor? Thank you very much. It's carried. And the next item, and that was the item that was at the table. Gentlemen, you all received that at the table when you arrived this evening, so I'll take the, put a motion on the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. A mover and a seconder to receive for information purposes the report regarding the Main Street revitalization report. So mover, please. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. And a seconder hand was, thank you, Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville Wolford does hereby receive report CAO-09-2020, being a report providing an update with respect to the Main Street revitalization project for information purposes. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Worship. And I just want to apologize for not being able to get this report to you with the agenda package originally, just sheerly a volume of work issue. But also, we're on very tight timelines on this project because we have the end season coming where frost sets in, but we also have time limits on the, as I've illustrated in the report, time limits on when the grant expires. And the pandemic and just there was unfortunately just bad timing in terms of when we got the grant approved. We're able to get the committee together, get their report back. Then we lost 2019 because of the frost coming. So we were able to get an extension to this hour, and then the pandemic hit. So it's just been a struggle to get this moving along. We are in very good stead. We have materials on hold with a supplier until tomorrow that will satisfy the design that you are looking at here. We have done some innovative things in order to keep this project very, very close to the grant amount so that there's not an extra burden. And I am very pleased with the design that we have managed to do. We've gone back and forth several times. It's been an absolute pleasure working with Jonah Robinson and Owen Sperry, the landscape designer and our contractor. And they've used some innovative approaches, just looking for different materials. We've run into a couple of places where the first choice of pavers wasn't available. They immediately did some networking, found another supply somewhere else. So I committed to council I would bring this design back so you can see it. The outline in the report gives you a sense of where we've gone with it. It is going to be a dramatic improvement in my estimation on that corner. It's going to open it up. It's going to refresh it. What I like about it the most, Your Worship, is it's introducing and transforming what is a small parkette, which is currently overgrown. And the committee obviously had some wisdom in picking this project. And it is going to transform that. And this is what I asked the landscape architect to do when we were looking at this, to look for ways to optimize that site, that facility for the community. And what we're doing here is we are transforming a small parkette into a public square, albeit not a large space, but a very functional space that can be used for public announcements, events, so forth. And in between those, it can be used for visitors to sit down, have a sandwich, watch the village, be right next to the UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm quite excited about it. So I want to make sure that came back to council today so you had a chance to look at the design.
Great. Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah, a huge amount of work getting it to this point. Any questions, observations? Mr. Malloy.
So just to clarify, so when are they going to be able to start?
As soon as I give them the word tomorrow, they will, that we are accepting the contract, they will order the materials. They're expecting to do the work in the last 2 weeks of October. We are just squeaking it in before the frost arrives. But they will get that done this year on the Merrickville Public Square component of it. I'm still in discussions with United County, Your Worship, and have the design that's here and some quotes for them as mentioned in the report. And we're encouraging the United Counties to come to the table for the Mill Street Boulevard, which is a large asphalt area right now. We'd really like to see that incorporated in this and have a uniform looking design with similar materials, similar look, so that we have a much more beautified gateway into the
that in
commercial
there?
district. That's in the
The
report.
Mill Street's in there?
Pardon me?
The Mill Street?
That component's in there as well. The design, if you look at the second and third drawings, Your Worship, you'll see the second one is the north end as you approach up towards the locks.
The last 2 pages?
The last 2 pages, they look like this, Your Worship.
I'm just trying to orient it.
Yeah, so the wide spot on the first drawing is up near the locks, beside the blockhouse.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, the stairs, these are the stairs right here that take you down in towards the blockhouse here. Okay, and as you go south, that whole distance on that asphalt will surprise you. It's 150 feet long. So it's a large area. We've had discussions with United Counties. I've had Brad Cole out. We've done several site visits.
Bill.
I'm sorry, Bill Guy, but also Brad Cole from our own team.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Operations, yeah. And we have addressed some of the concerns. Wanted to make sure that they had room for snow storage down the west side of Mill Street. So we have a 5-foot setback to the planting beds there. We've looked at the drainage issues so that as the snow melts in the spring, it will run south along the outer edge of the planting bed down to a catch basin at the corner, or into the catch basin that's recessed down in the public square area, and yet left the walkway open. We've kept them 5 feet wide. Discovered, much to my enjoyment, that the cost to do the borders on that planting bed, that entire length with armor stone, at the end of the day is the same cost as it would be to use concrete, precast concrete edging. And the reason is there's much more labor involved in using the precast edging stones and stacking them, but that labor offsets the cost in the cost of the materials. Armor stone is much more expensive, but it's much quicker to install as they're bigger blocks. So if you'll keep your fingers crossed, we'll have a discussion with United Counties and hopefully they will come to the table and be willing to fund that. My approach, just to let you know, with United Counties is we have come to the table with our grant. We've committed our entire grant to do the public square, some of which is on United Counties road allowance, some of which is on Parks Canada lands. We're doing our part. We're beautifying the gateway into the village. We're just asking them to do theirs. It's that simple.
Great, thank you so much. If there aren't any other questions or comments, call the vote to receive information purposes. All in favor? Thank you very much. It's carried. And confirmatory bylaw. Mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw, please. Thank you, Mr. Foster. And a seconder would be, thank you, Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 47-2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting of September the 14th, 2020, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 47-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And a motion to adjourn, a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Mr. Helpy, and seconded by Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that this regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrickville Wolford is hereby adjourned at 9 p.m. until the next regular meeting of Council on September the 28th, 2020 at 7 p.m. or until the call of the mayor is subject to need. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.